Well, hello again. Welcome to another edition of Something to Talk About. Glad to have you with us. And the gentleman sitting right next to me, and then the young lady sitting also on the screen there is our co-host Vaughn. Hey,
Good
Vaughn,
morning.
you're
Good
not in
morning,
front of the
everybody.
pool this time.
Morning.
You're sitting in front of the brick wall today instead of in front of the pool.
Because it's a little bit more shaded over here. Yeah, I was getting a little too warm. The sun during our show, the sun started to hit my back, and I started getting a little hot.
Oh,
It's more comfortable. Good morning, everybody.
Poor B. So it's good seeing you again. It's been a whole week since we've talked, and I'm glad to have you with us again. And the gentleman that's joining us, Robert Cuellar from New Horizons Benefits, he's here for a real purpose. And as you all know, Vaughn and I get together about midweek, and we say, what are we going to talk about? And it's really difficult to talk about anything that's not COVID related. But instead of just talking about the kids not being able to go back to school or if they're going to go back to school, I just kind of in the back of my head, I've just been wondering, what is this doing in the health field? What are the short-term effects and what are the long-term effects? And I realized that Vaughn and I, we could probably carry on a conversation, but it wouldn't be a really educational process because we'd be guessing at a lot of things. So thanks to Robert Cuellar, who is a member of the Allen and McKinney Netweavers, of which I'm a member also. A few times people have asked him during our Netweavers get-togethers about some of these things. And if somebody knows what they're talking about, it's him right there. And so, Robert, tell our audience, first of all, a little bit about yourself and a little bit about New Horizons Benefits and what your target audience is.
Well, I've been doing insurance for the last 10 years. And for the last 3, I've really focused on life and health insurance. And the biggest reason is that there's such a huge need for transparency, number one, and number two, affordability. People are paying more for their health insurance right now than they are for their home. Those monthly payments, are outrageous. And so I've teamed up with a number of different carriers to find solutions for, number one, affordability, and number two, coverage, because those will go, if you have something that's affordable, a lot of times you don't have the coverage. But I have found something that's very balanced in affordability, number one, and number two, in coverage. So my goal and my objective is to help to educate people on their options, because a lot of people don't realize that they do have options when it comes to health insurance, and they do have options when it comes to health care. So that's my goal in life is, that's my passion. I really want to help people understand it and, not give up the farm, not go bankrupt, not have to file bankruptcy because they did have a plan that just didn't cover them.
Well, and as we discussed briefly, and it's a major issue right now, is that we've got, what is it, about I don't know how many millions of people are furloughed, were laid off from their jobs. They are out of work. The businesses have closed, and they are forced to either go without insurance or to go into a COBRA plan, which can get very expensive. And so if someone is in that situation where they are waiting to be recalled from work or so, are they covered? What options might they have to say, during this pandemic, I need to be covered, and what are my options?
Well, Stuart, I'll tell you, I was talking to a client who's now a client a few weeks ago, and he was looking at a $3,200 a month COBRA payment. That's just insanity. And so I was able to put him and his family on a plan, and we're saving him $20,000 a year. And that's real money that that can go to his retirement, that can go to buying a car, to go for his children's education. It's real money that that people don't really consider, because they think that they're just handcuffed and tied to whatever it is that that they're facing. They don't understand the options available to them. And so when I was looking at a lot of these numbers, we've got over 35 million people that have lost their jobs, that have lost their coverage, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to protect their family, and they've got to decide whether, hey, do I pay the rent? Do I pay the mortgage? Do I make the car payment?
On the table?
Yeah, and or do I protect my family?
So what does his coverage look like? The man who you saved $20,000. What then does his coverage look like compared to, say, Cobra?
Well, when you compare it to Cobra, here's what he's got. Cobra is just a health insurance. What I do is I create an umbrella type coverage that not just covers his health, but covers his income. Because it's no good if you're sick and tied up and, and you're in the hospital or you're bedridden and you can't work. So we design a plan that's going to help you, number one, pay your medical bills, and number two, create an income source in a lump sum payment to help you protect your income. So we designed that umbrella, and we create it with not just a health plan, but also with an accident, a critical illness, and kind of a specified disease, which covers all the major diseases. And this plan that I put together for him came out to, about 60% less than the Cobra payment.
Wow.
So, and on average, whenever I sit down and talk to a family, we're able to save them some real money, because they didn't realize that those options were available to them.
So it's
Robert,
like
are these
financial
new
planning.
carriers? I'm just curious. Are these new carriers, or are these existing companies that that we've known and heard of, or are these new players?
They're existing companies, but it's a different type of plan. It's not a major medical plan, so it's not going to be you're compliant with what they call the MEC plan. That plan, you're paying for. If you're a 60-year-old male, why should you have to pay for maternity? Why should you have to pay for immunizations? Why should you have to pay for all these other services that are required on those plans? So what we do is we sit down and talk to a person, and we leverage their good health to qualify for this other type of plan. And
so it's a very customized plan.
It's a very customized plan. It's tailored to, number one, their coverage, number two, their family, and number three, their budget. So we're going to tailor something that, not a month or 2 months down the road, they say, man, I just can't afford this. But they're going to say, hey, look, you know what? Not only can I afford this, but I'm putting money in the bank. I'm saving every month, whether it be $100 or in some cases $600. And I'll give you a perfect example is teachers. A teacher plan right now for a family is about $1,100 to $1,300 a month. And so I can design a plan for that same family for between $500 to $600 a month. That's, $7,200 to $9,000 a year in savings. So it's a different type of plan, and a lot of people are afraid of different. Okay. But once you understand how something works and you work it, then you embrace it. Our retention rate is about 95%. Because people see that, hey, number one, I'm saving. Number two, it's designed to have a stable type of rate increase. It's age-based, not claims-based. So a lot of the major medicals are claims-based. So you're dealing right now with, let's say, the COVID situation. We don't know what those claims are going to be over the next 12 months. So projecting the claims, I was just reading an article about, how these actuaries are sitting there and they're trying to figure out, well, what are the claims going to be? Number one, hospital claims. Number two, what are going to be the claims after COVID? Because you have a lot of these people that have these lingering side effects from that disease, whether it be lungs or kidneys or liver, whatever it may be. These people are going to need medical treatment. So over the year, they're going to find out, hey, here's the true cost. They're not going to be able to do it by the end of the year. It's going to probably take through 2021. So you're going to see some big rate increases probably in 2022.
It's really interesting. It sounds like you're almost a financial planner first, and then you can kind of create a customized insurance package that works for each individual client of yours. It's very interesting.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the teachers. Now, teachers generally can sign up for healthcare through their school districts, But in cases like this, where are they going back to school? Are they homeschooling and all? What you're saying is that this is a supplemental plan to what they may be getting through their school district, or is it instead of?
You can use it as both. You can use it as a supplemental plan, or you can have the higher level of coverage and use it as a full coverage plan. And it's designed to do both, which is nice.
Well, because one of the killers is that you can get the premium maybe into more of an affordable bracket, but all of a sudden you're facing $5,000 or more, as a deductible. So you've got to just have something catastrophic before the benefit kicks in.
Here's some numbers for you, Stuart. 97% of the claims that are filed across the country are less than $35,000. Okay. A lot of that is, when you've got a deductible plan that has a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible, and then a 20 or 30% co-insurance, to where as a family, you have a max out of pocket of, let's say, $14,000 or $13,000. You're paying almost half or a third of that catastrophic situation. And the majority of families don't have $13,000 in the bank to pay that. So then they wind up with these massive bills, and they end up having to file bankruptcy, and they still had coverage. That's what a lot of people look at and say, wait a second, I had coverage and I'm still filing bankruptcy. Why? So there's really four components that really make something work to the benefit of a client. Number one is a good plan that gives you coverage with robust benefits. Number two is having a carrier, that insurance carrier, that designs the plan for the client and not for the stockholders. Okay. Number three is having a medical service provider that's willing to work with you and say, hey, look, you know what? I understand your situation. Okay. And I'm not going to charge you. I'll give you a perfect example. I've got a client of mine who needs an MRI. His doctor referred him to a hospital, and they told him it was going to be $4,800 for that MRI. I said, wait a second, let's make some calls. Called around. I found that same procedure for between $450 to $600. Same exact procedure. And so that's what people don't understand, is that, they need to shop They need to take responsibility for their health care and not just pawn it off on the insurance company or the medical service provider and expect them to have their best interest in mind, because they don't. This is a business. Health insurance is a business. Medical service is a business, and people have to treat it that way.
So that's interesting that you brought into the conversation the providers. I guess I would like to ask how, Robert, do you feel like how is it working with them? I mean, that's a whole. You've got your clients, and then you've got your providers. Do you have to kind of deal with both parties differently? Like, are the providers somebody who you're trying to get to join your efforts, or do you just kind of?
There's a huge movement right now with providers joining an effort of saying, hey, wait a second, there needs to be much more transparency in what we offer. This medical service, think about this, medical service is the only product, and it is a product, that you will purchase without knowing the cost. If you go to the hospital, they're not going to tell you how much it's going to cost you. If you go to your doctor, all they're going to tell you is, hey, your co-insurance is X amount. Your co-payment is $35. So you're thinking, well, it's $35. Well, really, it may be $300 that they're charging the insurance company, but you only pay $35.
Well, and also it may be that they submit what the charges are for that visit, and the insurance company comes back and says the maximum allowable amount is this. So the difference then comes back to the client.
Actually, the difference goes to the insurance company, because he's the one who's benefiting from the discount of that service.
Okay.
So that's why, when you have insurance companies that give you an HMO, which is a very limited network, and say, hey, look, if you go outside this network, we're going to charge you more, or we're not going to pay the bills at all. So they control the discounts that they're receiving and not you. But what if it was reversed? What if there was an insurance company that, number one, paid before you did, and number two, you got the discounts and not them? So it's a paradigm shift in your thinking. And there's a number of providers out there that were more than willing. Every single provider out there is more than willing to work with you. And because they know that, hey, look, you know what? I'd rather get paid now by a client than have to wait 30 or 60 or 90 days to get paid by the insurance company. And sometimes they'll deny the claim, or sometimes I've got to fight with them to get paid for this. Sometimes there'll be a negotiated price, and then something changes.
I have a question, Robert. Maybe I should know this, but I mean, I've always had to kind of pick my provider based on whether or not they're in or out of network. What is it, the provider that chooses whether or not they're in or out of network, or is it the insurance company that puts the provider in or out of network?
It's the provider who chooses the network.
Okay, and so what's the benefit of being in or out of network?
Is the number of clients that you see, because that insurance carrier is telling them, hey, look, you know what? If you join my network, you're now part of this big group. We've got 1 million clients. So now your name is on that list of providers.
I got you. Yeah.
So it's a benefit for them. And most providers are going to be in a number of different networks. So they're going to pick up clients through those networks.
So are most of your providers in or out of network?
They're both.
Okay.
Because this is a PPO plan, so the plan is going to pay regardless of whether the provider is in or out of the network, number one. And number two, when you have one of the largest networks in the country and you can use this plan anywhere in the country, it gives you so much more flexibility and so much more leverage as a client, right, as a patient.
Robert, I'm curious about the effects of COVID-19 going forward. Uh, let's assume, and there are over 5 million people already that have tested positive for COVID-19. And I think it's safe to assume that probably the majority of them have some type of health coverage, whether it's because of the Affordable Care Act or coverage one way or the other. A year from now, they go to a doctor and they're complaining of respiratory issues. Is this going to come back and haunt people that now the insurance companies will come forward and say, well, wait a minute, you tested positive for COVID-19 back in 2020. You have a pre-existing condition now.
There's a couple of different, if you have no insurance, number one, and you're trying to qualify for a plan, meaning that you're going to go through underwriting, then yes, it would be a pre-existing condition. But if you're going through the marketplace, through the ACA, there are no pre-existing conditions. So you're going to pick up a plan regardless. You could, Lord forbid doesn't happen, but you could have stage 4 cancer and still get a plan.
Because we as lay people, there's talk of repealing and replacing the current Affordable Care Act, or just taking pieces away from it. And the one piece that hits my family personally and all is that pre-existing coverage. And so it becomes a little worrisome. And in Vaughn's case, she's sending 2 children off to college in another week or so, and going to be putting them into a potential situation where they could test positive for COVID, which, granted, they will be quarantined and they can get through the process and all. But is that, I always worry, is that going to come back to work against them in the future and make it more difficult, or they'll be covered, but the premium starts to now go up?
The premium's going to go up. Regardless, every year there's been a rate increase within the ACA, and the rate increase can be anywhere from 5%, and I've seen as much as 30% increase. So when you're talking about a 30% increase on an $800 plan, all of a sudden you're paying $1,000. That's right. $200 more out of your budget. So any type, if you have a plan right now, regardless of the plan that you have, well, I say regardless, most plans, you're not going to have to worry about that pre-existing condition because you already have the plan. Once you're in the plan and it wasn't an issue before you got it, you're good. But if you try to qualify for a plan after you've been diagnosed, then it'll be a little bit more difficult.
Right.
It's just kind of, it's a little borderline scary because, like you said, now I'm a senior, I'm on Medicare, but still, my lifestyle is fairly fixed. If I am on a plan, and all of a sudden next year when I go in to rejoin, they say, oh, well, that plan doesn't exist anymore. Or you can keep the same premium, but your deductible is now going to go up. There's always pieces that get adjusted. Obviously the one thing people need to know is they need to know somebody like Robert Cuellar, and to be able to ask questions to find out, because it's scary. All of a sudden you open up that envelope and it says, just want to inform you that the rates are going up, like you said, 20%, 30%. That puts the onus on the policyholder to go back and say, okay, well, what am I going to do? I can't pay anymore. So I have to switch a plan. I have to switch companies. I have to switch the plan within the company in order to
I've got to raise my deductible.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I've got an $8,000 deductible, and you're paying all of your outpatient benefit services, your doctor's visits, your labs, your MRIs, your emergency room. You're making a lot of payments. So when everything's said and done, in addition to the high premium, you've also been more out of pocket as a family or as an individual.
Well, and also, to me, it just seems like along with all the other benefits that you just mentioned, one of the main benefits for me and my personality type is that you would get much more personal service through New Horizons. Just it's more boutique-ish. I don't know. I say that department store. I mean, dealing with insurance companies, the big, massive, they're monsters. I mean, they've got so many arms and legs and heads, and I mean, to get even a simple question answered is just quite a venture. My husband and I, we're intelligent people, we're thorough people. We look at our insurance claim, we study, we know what we need, and we know what we owe, and we know what we've been charged, and we have all the details. And even for us to get sometimes through the process is excruciatingly painful. and I know there are probably a lot of people out there that don't pay any attention and are losing money unbeknownst to them that they don't even really owe, because they're not looking carefully and kind of finding ways that really they shouldn't have been charged for something or another. With you, I think you just seem to take your client by the hand and lead them through the process. And I like the fact that you've looked at their whole financial kind of situation, and you customize a package that will work for them, and in some cases even get them more money in the long run.
Vaughn, one thing you've said is, it is kind of boutique-ish, but one thing that I do is that every single one of my clients has my cell number. So whenever they have any questions, they call me. They'll either call me, text me, email me, and I'll get an answer for them within 24 hours. So that's something.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and by the way, I just wanted and maybe Mark can get it up on the screen too. So if folks want to get in touch with you, the phone number is 469-831-2672. And you are not a nationwide company. You are an independent insurance company.
Actually, I'm licensed in 10 other states. And so this particular carrier, although we're not in all states, the plan will work in all 50 states because it is a nationwide PPO plan.
Well, and once we're all allowed to leave our homes and we start traveling again, that's an important aspect of it. Also, is to make sure that if you're in another location and you get sick, that you're going to be covered.
It is. It's very important. One other thing that I wanted to mention, especially when it comes to medical service, is that there are a number of different websites that you can go to and find out how much procedures should cost you. You've got something called Healthcare Blue Book. You've got Prater.us. All of these companies, they've done hundreds of thousands of claims. They go through these claims and they find out what the true cost of a procedure is, so they can tell you locally or regionally or within your state how much that procedure should cost.
I wasn't even aware of that. I know that there are some sites that are doing that for prescription drugs now, is to give you the fair cost of what some prescription drugs are.
That's
You're smiling.
I am, because I just read an article yesterday. There is a pharmaceutical company that just paid $1 billion in fines for kickbacks to their doctors. So if you don't think this is a business, you really, really need to think about it.
Yeah.
Anything. And this is not a knock on doctors or medical service providers, but you've got to remember that it's their business, number one. Number two, whenever that doctor gives you a referral to go get an MRI or an X-ray or lab work, there's a lot of times, not all the time, but there's a lot of times that they're getting a referral fee for sending that client to that particular provider. So, the question you have to ask, there's a few of them. Number one is that provider that you're referring me to, are they in my network? He doesn't know. Number two is, will the doctor pay for that service, or are you going to pay for that service? The answer is always going to be you're going to pay. So you should have the right to choose the provider that's going to fit your budget, your needs, and still provide the same service.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. And I mean, I'm not knocking providers or insurance, whatever either, although I have many a bad story to share, but I won't. I think probably 9 out of 10 people have had negative dealings with the larger insurance companies. They're just too big. It's too complicated to work through the process. Again, as we are layman's here, like just, I'm going to say almost every time I go to the doctor for whatever reason, or any one of my 3 kids or my husband, so out of 5 of us, the odds are that over 50% of the time we're having to question a statement, a line item, and it takes weeks oftentimes to push through and get to the answer. And most of the time we are owed money. And I can only imagine how much money the insurance companies, the larger ones, make off of people who simply don't care and don't dig.
They don't question it.
Yeah, they don't question. Exactly.
Right. It is what it is.
Well, it doesn't have to be what it is.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm going to give you, if I've got time, 2 examples. One of them is that, you go into the hospital, you're there 5 days, and you get this massive bill, $40,000, $50,000 bill. The average hospital stay, not an ICU, but just a hospital stay per day in this North Texas region is about $2,700 a day. But that hospital is billing you $10,000 a day. So when you ask them for an itemized, what they call EOB, evidence of benefit, coverage or the benefits, we don't do that. Well, we can't get that to you. Oh yeah, we'll get that to you. You can go round and round and round for months trying to get that information. When you finally get that, you're going to see line items on there that, it may be a Tylenol that they charged $50 for, rubber gloves that were $75.
A box of tissues that's sitting on the nightstand.
Yeah. I mean, they will charge you for everything. And nobody ever goes, you have a tough time going through those line items, ever getting it, number one, and number two, going through them. And so what we've done with one of these carriers is that we've got an advocacy type program that if your bills are over $2,500 after the benefits have been paid, they kick in and say, hey, wait a second, we're going to negotiate. We're going to fight on your behalf. So they get all those bills. They go in and do battle. I had one client that had a $38,000 bill after her benefits were paid. And 3 months later, they came back and said, okay, all you owe is $3,000. So they knocked off $35,000 off that bill.
So you basically have pre-coverage service. You basically get your client, you look at their finances, you customize the package, then say they have something medically necessary where they have to receive their coverage. Then you have almost like what you're saying, after coverage service, where you review what insurance covered, what they didn't cover, and now you're going to cover, and now you're going to look at what they didn't cover and renegotiate that.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
See, the average person, I just don't thinks about that. They go into number one. The one thing that I want to point out is you mentioned about the doctor. usually the doctor is so far removed from this whole process. He just takes care of the medical part of it, but he has a staff of people that are doing the insurance and the billing and the coding and everything in his office, and they're the ones that are sending in those reports and all to the insurance companies for the payments to them. If you were to ask the doctor, why did it cost $200 for you to swab my throat? And all, the doctor doesn't know. He just knows that he's doing it to find a medical reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all he's doing is providing what's called a CPT code to the billing department. And the billing department says, hey, look, you know what? In our book here, it says to charge $200 for that particular code. So, and that person in the billing department has no clue as to what that procedure was. So they're not going to sit there and say, you know what? That's outrageous. So it's all code driven.
Oh yeah.
But
absolutely.
you can mitigate a lot of those expenses by asking questions.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it seems to me, I'm curious. I'm outside, so there's a fly here. But what are the demographics of your client base? Elderly like where are you?
I got asked that question a couple of days ago, and I really don't have a set demographic because I'm dealing with people that are 25, 26-year-old single people all the way up to 63, 64-year-old couples. And in between, the families that are anywhere from, 30 to 45, 50-year-olds that have families of 3 and 4 and 5 people, children. So, it's kind of all over the place. There's really no one set.
Well, but it's certainly a service that could accommodate, across the board. I guess I asked because while I see your service working for everyone, like you just said, really very much so elderly, perhaps people who are somewhat taken advantage of. And it seems to me like they would be very much better protected in a smaller type, company like yours, where you're really looking.
Go ahead. I think she froze.
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost, my screen went dark. But looking out for their well-being from the beginning when you meet them till till you're negotiating the very end, results.
Yes.
And I mean, I do think a lot of people, not just elderly, but are taking advantage of it. And especially you were saying after you receive that statement and your insurance covers this, and then your portion of it is that, a lot of times you really aren't justifiably responsible for paying even what they're saying you owe. And it takes somebody like you to dig into it and better define those numbers.
Vaughn, but here's the thing, that you are responsible because you signed a sheet of paper when you entered that hospital saying that if the insurance company didn't pay, that you would be responsible for it.
True.
That's right.
True.
Now, I have got a solution for you when it comes to that. There's a little phrase that people can put on there that says, hey, look, you know what? I will only pay for the services where I've been provided a price before the service was provided. You do that and you're protected. You can, and you want to make a copy of that. You want to get a copy of it for your own records, because when they come back with that $50,000 bill for services that should have cost about $7,000, you've got a way to protect yourself.
Yep. Good advice.
Yeah. Never knew that.
Let me ask you this, Robert. I'm sorry, Stuart, to interrupt. Many years ago, when I was having my third child, I was given a wet tap when I was having my epidural. Well, certainly that wasn't my fault. It was the person, a doctor, I don't know what his title would have been, but he was responsible for injecting the epidural into my spine, and he went too far, and that all was created. And so it was a big mess, and I was in excruciating pain for a couple days. Well, they had to bring in, I didn't request it, but the hospital brought in a pain management doctor, somebody who worked for the hospital who was um, specialized in pain management, and they ended up giving me a blood tap, and I was able to leave the hospital a couple days later and go on bed rest. Fast forward, we got our statement, and in addition to the initial expenses that we were aware of, I don't even remember how many thousands of dollars on to the bill for this pain management doctor. Well, as I've told you before, Phil, my husband, studies everything that comes into the house regarding finances, and he looked at it and said, we're not responsible for this pain management doctor. A, it wasn't our fault that somebody screwed up giving her epidural, and B, we didn't even request a pain management doctor. He just showed up into the room one day. So C, we're not paying it. And it was a battle, but we ended up not having to pay it. So once again, be aware, study your statements, see what you're supposed to be. And if you don't think it's right and just, you need to fight it. It sounds like you, in this case, you would be somebody who would fight it for your client.
Not just my clients, but anybody who needs help. I help people that are not my clients. That's one thing that's important to me, because I'm sick and tired of people being taken advantage of. I really am. And I want people to understand that there's somebody out there that's on their side, somebody out there that's willing to help them. And I'm not going to charge them for it. If they need if they got a bill for $40,000 because the doctor that treated them wasn't in their network, but the hospital was, I'll show you how to fight that. I'll show you what to do, the steps to take. It's important to know that, hey, look, you know what? There's a way to protect yourself without having to file bankruptcy. There's a way to protect yourself without your credit taking a hit because you didn't make those payments or you didn't pay that bill. There's ways to protect yourself.
I have to ask, Robert, first of all, I commend you on your efforts here and your mission. How did you become so knowledgeable on all of this? Was it just experience, or did you go to, I don't know, some kind of training?
No, I just do a lot of reading.
A lot of reading.
I read a lot of different articles, and whenever I talk to other agents that are very successful, I ask them what they're doing, what it is that they're doing to help their clients. And I would say 90% of what I've learned has come through other agents. It's, the websites where you can go and get pricing, the advocacy. That's something that I went through, and I had a client who had a friend who was going through that. So I did a lot of research on that and what to do and how to help them. So I gave them that information. So there's a lot of good information, but you just have to know where to look or who to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Vaughn, made reference to the fact that you are more of a boutique type operation, and I think that more people need to understand that when that is available, take advantage of that. You are more or less like an ombudsman. You are putting yourself in between the medical community and the client to say, I'm going to dig on your behalf, because I'm sure that there are options that are there for you. And we as policyholders and payees don't usually take that into consideration. I have often had a CAT scan or an MRI, and all of a sudden, 5-6 months later, you get a bill from somebody that you never heard of, that was a doctor that was brought in just to read the results. Not only your doctor, but there was somebody else, a radiologist or something, that came in and just read it. And now you get this bill for $120, $150. And too often we're just too quick to say, oh, well, I guess we just need to take out the checkbook and write the check. You don't have to do that. That's what you're saying, Robert.
You don't. I mean, I myself and other agents like me are a huge threat and a big danger to major medical. And the reason is this: we are creating and teaching and educating clients on how to shop for healthcare. how to ask the questions, and how to protect themselves. So when you do that, you know, it's like going into a grocery store, getting a cart full of groceries, going to the checkout and not knowing how much you're going to pay. And the cashier says, don't worry about it. We'll send you a bill. Go ahead and take it home. Give me your address, sign this right here, and don't worry about it. We'll send you a bill. That's what you're doing with your healthcare. So we're educating you on how not to go through that process.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining Vaughn and I this morning and sharing some of this. Just for those that are listening and watching the program, you can reach Robert at the phone number that Mark maybe can throw up on the screen again. Go to newhorizonsbenefits.com. That'll give you the link also to reach Robert. This is it's a very serious issue that we're all in and facing, and it's going to maybe get worse before it gets better. But a knowledgeable solution is important. And when there's people like Robert that can help you arrive at those solutions, it's a good thing. So, Robert, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be with us.
I appreciate it. And Stuart, before we get off or before I leave, I not just deal with individuals and small business owners, but also with groups.
Okay.
So I work with groups to show them the same process, they'll have that ability for their employees.
So business people can do that too.
Oh, yes.
Excellent.
We educate them on how to find the right plan for their people.
Excellent. Well, Robert, thank you very, very much. You stay well and stay healthy. And Vaughn, the same to you.
You
and
too.
We will get back next week and find something else to talk about. And I wish everybody well. Again, thank you, Robert.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure, and it was I think a necessary show to share with our audience. So y'all take care, be well, have a great weekend, and we will see you right here again next week on Something to Talk About.
Bye, guys.